Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Shuba and I like to read books. January was such a good month for me. Honestly, I am surprised. Normally, January is a month that just drags on forever. I want it to be over before it even starts, but this month was pretty good and I actually read quite a lot of good books. I read 7 books total. I did DNF 2 books and I'm so glad that I did, because if I wouldn't have, I probably would have felt slumpy. I probably would have forced myself to keep going, and that's never fair. I can't wait to talk about those books, so let's get right into it and let's talk about the books that I read in January. We're starting off very strong with Misery by Stephen King. This is the first Stephen King horror that I've read. Last year I did read Fairy Tale and I really liked that book. I wouldn't say it's scary, it's more of a fantasy book. So I was excited to finally pick up a true horror by Stephen King, and it did not miss. I loved this book. I had already watched the movie a year or two ago, so I was interested to see if I would like the movie more than the book. And normally I read the books before the movies, so I was a little worried that I would get bored reading a book that I already know the plot to, but that was not the case, and I didn't have to worry about that. This is about our main character. His name is Paul Sheldon. He is a famous romance author. He's in Colorado and he's driving, but then he gets into a car crash, wreck of some sorts, and then his #1 fan, Annie Wilkes, finds him and brings him back home to her house, not to the hospital. We find that Annie Wilkes is super sweet and really caring. She's a nurse and she can heal Paul Sheldon back to good health. However, she rummages through his belongings and finds a manuscript for a book that he is about to publish. It's the first draft, and she ends up reading it and she finds out that Paul is planning on killing her favorite main character, Misery. Hence the title, Misery. So now what Annie does is she tells him that he needs to rewrite his book, or I'm gonna leave you with that or, because I don't want to spoil anything. You'll just have to read the book for yourself. I really enjoyed this story. I thought this was a slow burn, claustrophobic book that constantly kept me on the edge of my seat, and I was just reading it so quickly. And it's funny because I know what happens. This book definitely goes more into detail and it is very gory, so be wary of that. I would say that the level of gore is Saw, the movies Saw, but maybe like a step down. It's still pretty gross, and I really enjoyed our main female character, Annie Wilkes. I think that she is the perfect villain. I can keep going and talking about this book, but I do have a vlog where I read this book during a snowstorm that you can check out. I definitely recommend this story if you're wanting to get into Stephen King's writing, or if you just want a good horror. This was really good. The ending was perfect. I also think that the movie did the book justice. Both were very good on their own, but also the movie complemented the book for sure, and I'm so glad that I read this. I recommend one of my favorite romances of the year. We're already starting off strong, and one of my favorite romances ever, Unromance by Erin Connor. I loved this book so much. I didn't want this book to end. I really did not want this book to end. This is the perfect rom-com in my book, and that is because we get our main male character's point of view. If you've seen my reviews before, and if you know me, you know that I love and I need a main male character's point of view when it comes to a romance or a rom-com, and this did just that. This is about our main character. Her name is Sawyer. She's a romance author who doesn't believe in love anymore. And then we have our main male character. His name is Mason, and he's a TV heartthrob who only wants to find love. He keeps dating and being in relationships, but they never last long. So he's wondering, what's the point? What's the matter? Why can't I find love? Sawyer and Mason end up having a meet cute in an elevator, which leads to a one-night stand. And that's that. They don't see each other for another 3 weeks. Once they run into each other, they get into this sort of situationship that just leads to more, and it's such a good book. It's so funny. It's so cute. Mason is the perfect male character. Sawyer is also really relatable too. Their back and forth banter was just perfect. This book is very, very good. It's so delightful, and I highly recommend reading this book. If you enjoyed You Again by Kate Colbeck, this is a perfect, not replacement, but a compliment to that book, because I can't decide which one I love more. It's that good. And secretly, I think I might just like this one more. This next book was my Fable Book Club's pick for the month of January, and I also have a reading vlog reading this book, so I won't go into too much detail, but the book is The Wedding People by Alison Espach. This was a sweet character-driven story. Normally, I get nervous about character-driven stories because I worry they're gonna be too boring for me or I won't relate to the character, but Phoebe is so perfect, and this story is really good too. You can tell that I've had a really good reading month in January, because we've had 3 back-to-backs. This is a story about our main character. Her name is Phoebe. She's hit rock bottom emotionally, physically, mentally. She's just not there anymore. She's ready to take her life. Definitely check the trigger warnings, because there's quite a lot of difficult topics and situations that our main character goes through in this book. So I want to be mindful of that, especially if I'm talking about this story. She decides to go to her happy place, and her happy place isn't somewhere she's actually been before. She saw it in a magazine, but she wants to go. So she goes to a cute little inn in Newport, Rhode Island. When she gets there, people keep asking her if she's a part of the wedding group or the wedding party, hence the name The Wedding People. And from there, her perspective on life just shifts and takes a 180. She ends up meeting people within the wedding. She ends up meeting the bride. Throughout this whole week or so of her interacting and getting to know these people, she starts to realize that there is more to life, and she wants a second chance at life. Phoebe learns that sometimes friends can be found in the most unlikely of situations, and that family can also be found in the most unexpected ways. This book is so beautiful. I listened to the audiobook while I was reading this book, and it just made the experience so much better. I would love to reread this book so I can annotate it now that I've read it for the first time fully, and I can go back and really empathize with our main character, Phoebe. There wasn't a supporting character that I didn't like in this book. I learned a few life lessons from this story, and if you pick this book up, you probably will too. I highly recommend. The last 3 books I'm going to talk about are in a series. It is the Empyrean series. We have Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and ONYX STORM. This was my 3rd time reading Fourth Wing and my 2nd time reading Iron Flame. I listened to the graphic audiobooks for these 2 books, and they were so much fun. I love graphic audiobooks because you have different narrators for each character, but then you have background noises that really add to the elements of the story, and it really seems like I'm listening to a story in my mind. It made the whole experience so much better. I read Iron Flame and Fourth Wing in preparation for ONYX STORM, the 3rd book in the Empyrean series, which came out at the end of January. I do have a reading vlog for ONYX STORM that is spoilers and goes into more details of my full reactions for it. But let me just take a minute to talk about ONYX STORM without spoilers as a review. Overall, the first time when I read ONYX STORM, I enjoyed it. I thought that the ending was crazy. I thought that the first half of the book was really boring and very slow, and then we slowly picked up the pace and ramped up for the second half of the book. I really thought that the first half should have been condensed even more. It was just filler and fluff, and the second half really drove the story. But the more I sit with this story, and it's been 2+ weeks now, I actually don't like ONYX STORM. If I had to rank the 3 books, I would say Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and ONYX STORM. I really don't think I liked ONYX STORM at all. I felt that ONYX STORM was a filler story, and it's a shame because it's the third book in the series. We shouldn't have a filler. If there was a filler, it should have been Iron Flame, which kind of was a filler, but you would have thought that Rebecca Yarros would have improved her writing by the third book, which she did, but in terms of filler and plot, things just didn't add up. I felt that we were left with a lot more questions than we had answers to. The ending was a cliffhanger and left us jaw-dropping, yes, but also it just didn't make us feel whole or even half. The writing style and the plot pacing was not great at all, and for this being such a hyped up book, I think that it should have been written better. And if you loved ONYX STORM, I love that for you. I'm so glad that you did. But just me sitting and looking back and thinking about other fantasies that I read, other unappreciated fantasies that are so much better, I think that this is a story that was pretty mediocre. Would I recommend this series? I mean, yes, if you're trying to get into fantasy, if you've already started the series and you want to continue, then sure. I think that there's other books out there. I just read a first book in a series that's fantasy by a popular author, but no one's going to midnight releases for this author. And it was so good, and I can't wait to talk about it during my February wrap up. A lot of the TikTok popular hyped up books, I love that that's getting people to read books. I love that so much. Overall, I just think that ONYX STORM could have been written better. I think that there is so much we could have done to add more substance and to make us feel, as a reader, better about the story. That's just my opinion. I'm gonna stop talking about ONYX STORM now and move on to my DNFs. The first DNF that I had for the year is Quicksilver by Callie, Hart. This was a book that I read for Sully's book club. If you haven't joined her book club yet, I will link it down below. It's on Fable, it's free. Also join mine too while you're at it. I was very excited to read this story because it's a very popular romantasy story that everyone's been hyping up about. I DNF'd this book at 50%. I was so bored. I didn't like the characters. I couldn't really care for the world that we were at. I was hoping that things would pick up, but they weren't. I also started to realize that a lot of the plot and pieces within the story, it felt like they were pulled from other romantasy stories. And that's exactly how I felt when I read Powerless by Lauren Roberts, and I did not like that book at all, and I even finished it. Going back to the idea of super hyped TikTok books or Bookstagram books, I'm a little weary now moving forward. I think I'm gonna be more hesitant about picking up really popular romantasies and really popular books because they've really just been misses for me. And it's mostly just been romantasy, and maybe also I'm tired of romantasy at the moment because all books kind of seem the same. So moving forward, I'm gonna be more picky about the romantasies that I do read, and I'm not just gonna read them because they're TikTok, book talk is TikTok, Bookstagram hyped up stories. Does that make sense? 2025, I'm gonna be more picky in life in general with my books. Hello, I was editing this video and I realized that my math was not adding up at all. I was missing one book, and that book is a DNF. It is Under Lock and Key by Lana Ferguson. Last year I read The Fake Mate and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was such a fun book and an introduction to the Omegaverse. If you don't know what the Omegaverse is, I recommend Googling it because I don't think I can explain it properly. This is kind of similar to that. It does include monsters. This story revolves around the Loch Ness monster, who is the romantic male interest in this story. I'm not really sure if that's a spoiler or not. I feel like I can't even tell you what the story is about unless I read the back cover. I just remember not liking this book. I remember it feeling really boring to me. I didn't care for the characters, and I say that a lot when I DNF books, and I need to be able to appreciate characters to continue on with the stories. If I'm bored, then there's no point in me reading the book. I remember reading quite a bit before feeling like this is not fun for me at all, which is why I DNF'd this book. Just wanted to add that in there before we finish off this video. DNFing is good for the soul. Those are the books that I read in the month of January and the 2 books that I ended up DNFing. I'm really glad that I DNF'd those 2 books because if I wouldn't have, I probably would have been in a reading slump. I probably would have given the book a rating that it may or may not have deserved. I just want to be more cognizant about when I'm not enjoying something just as much as when I am enjoying something, because if I'm not enjoying a book and I'm forcing myself to read it, then I'm most likely going to give it a bad review. I'm most likely going to maybe not want to read from that author again, and I don't think that's necessarily fair. I just want to read books that I enjoy, and if that means DNFing a book, then so be it. I felt really great after starting a new book, after DNFing a book. I felt so great, and I didn't even look back when I decided to DNF Quicksilver or Under Lock and Key. I hope you enjoyed this short, quick video. I will see you in another video next week. Have a great day. Bye.